2, 1. We have ignition. In your face, all over the place. We're online 24/7. 24/7. You're listening to the hottest internet station.
From beautiful Saline in southeastern Michigan.
Around the world at freedomtalkradio.net.
This is the 2009 Top 10 Webcam in the World winner. This is SETV.
Well, good Saturday to everybody. Belzam here. How is everybody doing? It is a pleasure to see all of you. Well, I don't see you. You see me, but I don't see you. Once again, we are using our LED studio light that I have forgotten to turn on. Hold on one moment. And there we go, I'm back. The studio light is now on. Presumably, those of you watching on the video side can actually see the difference that I see here on our studio monitor. And it certainly looks good. It is a LED studio light that is completely off the grid. It uses no electricity, so Big Brother does not know that I'm doing my show right now. That's pretty exciting stuff, isn't it? Today is Saturday, May 10th, 2014, and let's get right on to the show because there is a event on the Idiot Box that I'm going to watch after the show. So, let's get on with the show. Do you know who John Coleman is? John Coleman is actually the founder of the Weather Channel. He's still active in the weather forecasting arena, and he uses his own blog to post information about coming weather trends as well as his personal viewpoint on information about global warming or climate change or what they now call global climate disruption. The obvious lesson here is that if you can't sell it one way, you change the name and see if that works. Over at townhall.com, there was a lady by the name of Katie Pavlich that wrote this past week about the latest climate report issued by the White House. This is what we call a stop at desperation station. Hold on one moment while I do something real quick right there. There we go. Let me switch back to this. There we go. This is what you call a stop at desperation station. Liberals are constantly changing the names of things in order to get away with the same old dirty tricks while pretending the initiative is brand spanking new. First, it was global warming, then it was climate change, and now the White House science advisor, John Holdren, has declared that we should now refer to what the Earth has been doing for billions of years as global climate disruption. At any rate, but getting back to John Coleman, he has a daily blog at, I believe it's johncoleman.com, johncoleman.com. All you got to do is do a Google search for him if that turns out not to be his website address, and you'll come up with it. He has a blog entry for May 7th. I'm going to go over a couple of his blog entries here on the show because it's very interesting. His viewpoint is indeed very interesting, well thought out, and scientifically based. So it's worth talking about it for a little while here on the show. And his blog entry for May 7th, 2014 goes like this. The sky is falling. Climate change is running wild and disaster is certain unless we immediately stop burning coal and oil and move quickly to green energy to eliminate the use of fossil fuels. Heat waves, huge floods, powerful storms, droughts, and rising seas are on the verge of killing millions of us and destroying a civilization. That is John Coleman's summary of the new federal assessment of climate change issued by a Obama administration team of more than 300 specialists guided by a 60-member federal advisory committee that produced the report. It was reviewed by the usual cornucopia of federal agencies and a panel of the National Academy of Sciences, who apparently think they know what they're doing because their names sound so important. The 600-page litany, that's what John Coleman calls it, the litany of doom and gloom, has received extensive coverage by the panting anchors. I can't even get through that paragraph. The 600-page litany of doom and gloom has received extensive coverage by the panting anchors of the national media, who feel important when they tell their audience that the sky is falling, which is usually followed by horrible pictures of storms, floods, droughts, and heat waves that leap out of the TV sets of the New York and Washington, D.C. headquartered media was particularly excited to tell us how the huge increases in floods and storms was the worst in that part of the nation. In the meantime, here in southeastern Michigan, it is currently, hold on one moment, it is currently 71 degrees, which is about 10 degrees below normal. The farmers in our area, because the weather is so cold, have still not been able to plant their fields. People that normally plant flowers outside, like marigolds, things like that, still haven't done it because it's been too cold. The house plants that I normally put outside, we have tropical house plants all over the studios here because they provide, number one, oxygen. They eat carbon dioxide, and they are pleasant to look at throughout the year. So we put them outside in the summertime and bring them inside in the wintertime. We have a Norfolk pine. We have usual spider plants, the ever-popular spider plants. We have two different types of palm trees. One is a palm tree that can take cooler temperatures, and the other is a type of a short palm tree that you would see, say, by the side of the road in Florida or someplace like that. It is a very nice palm tree. It's about 10 years old. And the usual cactuses. In fact, I have one cacti that is celebrating an anniversary of sorts tomorrow, because tomorrow's Mother's Day. The cacti in question was purchased by my mother when she was a little girl for one of the very first Mother's Days for her mother. And I have that plant. It has been bequeathed to me. It is some type of a cactus. We've never really been able to identify what kind of cactus it is, but it has the most lovely, red, waxy flowers that have virtually no odor, which is very strange. So we can't even put those plants outside. If you put them outside, you got to bring them back in the wintertime. In fact, I think it's going to be next Wednesday. We're expecting lows in the high 30s again. So, yeah, well, I guess that would be part of a global climate disruption, as John Coleman has said that that's what the federal government has said about it. But here on John Coleman's blog, he goes on to say this: I am deeply disturbed to have to suffer through this total distortion of the data and agenda-driven destructive episode of bad science gone berserk. I like listening to this guy, too, in his videos, because he sounds like Walter Cronkite. That's what his voice is very nice. Going back up to the top of his daily blog, I wanted to go over something else that he had. His blog from today, May 10th, which I thought was very apropos because it has to do with the exact same thing. And in case you haven't noticed, John Coleman's big into the real science behind this climate change debacle. Here's that photo right there. See that photo on your screens right there? It's an old guy on the right side and a younger guy on the left side that looks kind of like Albert Einstein. His name is Patrick Moore. He was a co-founder of Greenpeace right there. And the left-hand side is when he looked, how he looked when he founded Greenpeace. He was a founder of Greenpeace, Patrick Moore was, and he, a few weeks ago, according to Coleman here, he testified before the U.S. Senate Committee on Environment and Public Works and told them There is no scientific evidence that humans are the primary cause of recent global warming. Moore also noted global warming is occurring at a modest pace and does not seriously threaten human welfare regardless of its cause. He resigned from Greenpeace in the mid-1980s. And in the mid-1980s, he founded it in 1971, and he quit in 1986. And this is what he said in front of the U.S. Senate. This is a quote, by the way. There is no scientific proof that human emissions of carbon dioxide are the dominant cause of minor warming of the Earth's atmosphere over the past 100 years. If there were such proof, it would be written down for all to see. No actual proof, as it is understood in science, exists. Today, we live in an unusually cold period in the history of the life of the Earth, and there is no reason to believe that a warmer climate would be anything but beneficial for humans and the majority of other species. The reason why Moore quit Greenpeace is because they went from environmentalism to leftist politics. And a lot of their politics, specifically global warming, are not based on science. And therefore, he quit because he can't support that sort of thing. And I'll just go ahead and say the same thing that others have said, much more eloquently than I have, that their models are all based on computer-driven models. Now, they're telling us what's going to happen 100 years from now. You have to remember, back in the 1980s, they were telling us by now the ocean was going to rise 10 feet. The ice caps were going to be completely clear of ice by now. And it hasn't happened. So they've tacked on a few more years to it and told us this time for sure it's going to happen. Apparently they haven't heard the story about the boy that cried wolf. Now, Coleman at his website, he talks about the following. Hold on a minute here. Let me go back to this and go right here to a sentence here that I wanted to talk about. And after his statement before the Senate, Coleman says about Moore, it sounds like this man should be added to my list of climate change skeptic heroes. I hold back a little, however, because his post-Greenpeace life, he has become a Washington, D.C. lobbyist for nuclear power. I'm not anti-nuclear. In fact, at one point I was really interested in thorium nuclear power. However, I try to stay focused on the science. Carbon dioxide is not a pollutant of global warming and cannot get involved in politics, and certainly don't want to be a promoter. So he talks about thorium-powered nuclear plants. I'm going to tell you about thorium power. In case you haven't heard about it, it is, to me, it is extremely exciting. It would make our electricity dirt cheap. It would make electric cars 100% viable. Not just the electric cars that they have now that can only go 40 or 50 miles. We're talking electric cars so you can take your trip across the country in them. Because electricity would be so cheap, having charging stations around the country would be essentially free. You probably wouldn't even have to hardly pay anything for the electricity because of thorium power. But it will never become widespread because of the military-industrial complex cannot make weapons from it. It has no waste. Remember, the idea behind all of this agenda that's going on around the world with these trumped-up wars, with these nuclear disasters, with all of these diseases and everything else, is to reduce the world's population. Thorium is safer, cleaner, and more powerful. That won't kill people like Fukushima, so obviously it's off the table. But what is thorium? Let's go over to the Thorium Energy Alliance website. There's a photograph right there on the screen for those of you watching on the video side of the show of a hunk of thorium. Thorium is a naturally occurring element found in the Earth, the Moon, Mars, essentially everywhere. So in other words, if we had to, we could go to the Moon and mine it. It is slightly radioactive metal, which is about 4 times more abundant than uranium. Because of its fertility, it can be used as fuel in a nuclear power plant. But why is thorium important if we already have uranium-fueled nuclear power plants? A thorium-fueled nuclear reactor generates hundreds of times the power of uranium or coal-powered plants, but produces essentially no waste. A thorium power plant would produce less than 1% of the waste of a uranium plant of equal magnitude. And of course, it would produce no carbon dioxide. More importantly, while the waste of a uranium power plant is toxic for over 10,000 years, the little waste that is produced in a thorium plant is benign in under 200. Even more impressive, the thorium power plant can be used to burn our current stockpile of nuclear waste. Got that? Not only is it cleaner, not only does it produce no waste, not only does it not produce carbon dioxide, it will use our current stockpile of nuclear waste. And yet the benefits continue. The thorium power plant cannot melt down. Thorium cannot practically be made to use nuclear weapons, and that's why it's not going to be used for nuclear power. There is enough thorium in the United States alone to power the country at its current energy level for over 10,000 years. You listening to me? Thorium power, the thorium power plant, if we used those, we got rid of all of our natural gas and all of our coal plants and switched everything over to thorium power, we could power the United States at its current rate for 10,000 years. There's no way in hell this country or their human civilization at this level is going to last for 10,000 years. It's a no-brainer, and yet nobody is using it. Sure, the Chinese are exploring it. France is exploring it. But you can't convert the stuff into nuclear weapons. So isn't anybody going to want to use it? You can't kill people with it, is what it boils down to. That's why they don't want to use it. Thorium power. Look it up. And, folks, when you think about this thorium power stuff, it's slightly radioactive, so it's not going to kill you. There's very little waste. It will burn up the nuclear waste that we currently have sitting around. It'll run the country for 10,000 years. People could have a thorium reactor parked in their backyard, and it wouldn't be dangerous. There's no chance of it melting down. This is, think of your cold fusion come to real life with this stuff. You could have a thorium reactor in your car and power an electric car with it. It's insane how good of an idea this stuff is, and yet nobody is changing over to it, which is really, really sad. But we humans are what we like to call idiots, hence the name of the show, Surrounded by Idiots. Let's go on to the next idiot in our cavalcade of idiots. So the Pope screwed the pooch and seemed to call for wealth redistribution worldwide. 10 minutes later, the largest backtracking of what he meant was statements took place in the largest effort in recent memory. They were coming out of the woodwork all over the place. Now let me tell you what I know about wealth redistribution. And it's been going on full tilt for 5 years now here in the United States. While the rich get richer, actually longer than that. But the current bout, the bout that is affecting people at my income level, has been going on full tilt for 5 years. We all know the rich get richer. We're talking about the ultra-millionaires, the billionaires, and the ones that are making the good faith attempt to get there. just to get to $1 million so he can take it easy, maybe retire early, not have to draw on Social Security. That would be a good thing, wouldn't it? We're making a good faith effort, and we are only getting beat about the head for our efforts. Let me go over a few ways that wealth redistribution has started and gotten worse in the past few years. I've got an antique moped. It's called a Batavus. It was made, I believe, in 1971. It has a little 2-cycle motor on it. Nice little machine. I like it. Well, it needed tires. I was restoring it. I was restoring it back to its full, original beauty. Needed tires. Go into the bike shop. I said, hey, you got any wheels that look like this? Basically BMX tires, little BMX bikes. We used to call them banana bikes because they had a seat shaped like a banana. And they use little knobby tires. The guy at the moped shop tells me that I better buy my bike tires soon because a new Obama-generated tariff is coming on tires. Okay, I think to myself, do a little bit of research. Yep, sure enough, there's a tariff coming. Didn't pay too much attention to it. At the same time, I needed to buy tires for the Surrounded by Idiots truck. So I ordered 4 new tires. Total cost at that time was $324 US for 4 tires. Not a problem. It wasn't too bad. So I got my tires. Here in 2014, this past January, I had completely forgotten about the new tariff, and I needed tires for the Surrounded by Idiots truck. Figure 324, maybe it might be up to 370, something like that by now. Well, the same tires, the same brand, the same model of tires, now cost $485. That's one particular case. I'm going to show you something right here. This, something that I've never told the audience or shown you before. Do you know what this is? This right here is what is commonly known as a lung scud, a coffin nail. It is a cigarette. I make my own cigarettes. I don't buy them commercially. I don't buy the cardboard-laden, chemical-enhanced cigarettes that you get in a pack. I buy bulk tobacco and I make my own. 100% pure tobacco is what this is. Just like what the Native Americans used to smoke. 100% pure tobacco. Well, back in 2008, it was an all-new bulk tobacco tax. At that time, tobacco went from $16 a pound to $40 a pound, all part of their wealth redistribution program. Now, I, like most people, haven't had a raise at my regular day job in several years, yet prices keep going up. Now in 2014, and you idiots are going to love this because it's coming your way if it hasn't gotten to you yet. You are just going to love this. Not only do I have to purchase my own health care because the company that I work for, they can't afford to do that anymore because it is extremely expensive now. In fact, the way it worked is the employees paid for part of it and the employer paid for part of it. He put in, a certain amount of money, and he still is. He's still putting in a certain amount of money every month to help us purchase our health care. A lot of companies, small companies, do that. So I have to pay for my own health care. I've had to go into the private market and buy an individual health care plan. And not only is my pay exactly the same as it was in 2007 because of the goddamned recession that these people foisted upon us, I believe on purpose, but now my health care costs have gone from $120 a month to $180 a month, and it is now taxed. As in, not in pre-tax like it used to be. Now it's taxed as income. Thus, my first paycheck is effectively, my first paycheck out of the month is effectively giving me $10 an hour. For my first paycheck, what I take home is the equivalent of $10 an hour. My first paycheck of the month is now over $250 smaller than it was before this Obamacare horse crap came into existence. $250 a month pay cut. Let's do some quick math here, because I haven't done the math, and that way I can really start swearing. So 250 times 12 would be a $3,000 a year pay cut. Thanks to the government. That is your wealth redistribution right there. In the meantime, food prices, gasoline prices, utility prices keep going up. People like me, the middle class, are now poor overnight. That's your wealth distribution. And this is being lauded as a great idea by the Pope. I've given my health, my time, and my treasure to make my life better. And now the liberation theology idiots have decided that I should pay even more. And I think this right here is the part where I say, kiss my ass. Because I'm tired of the entire system like this. We have to be able to change this. And you know, I have been doing this show since 2009. And I find myself asking the same questions over and over again, no matter how big the audience is, no matter who the guest is on the show. And I've got a great guest coming up in a few weeks, by the way. No matter who the guest is, no matter how big the audience gets, no matter how many people listen or watch the show, watch it on YouTube or all the places where it's embedded week after week. I find myself asking the same set of questions over and over again. How is it that there are so many like-minded people communicating and accomplishing nothing more than bitching rants about the real injustices being crammed down our throats? For instance, this past week, and this was going to be part of the show, but I ditched it at the last minute because I didn't want the show to go too long. An attorney who is a parent didn't like the fact that his 11-year-old daughter was being given sexually explicit material in school. And he got up to talk at the school board meeting. And he talked for longer than the 2 allotted minutes. Well, the head of the school board, where he is, has passed her own law. She has no legislative power whatsoever, but she has ordered the police to arrest anybody that goes over 2 minutes. And the attorney was arrested. Can you say a ready-made lawsuit? There are so many of us communicating about things like this, about the things like the cops that shoved the sharp object down the throat of a teenager to find drugs and kill them. The fact that in California there was a wedding reception going on. Listen to this. There was a wedding reception going on, and one of the guests stepped outside and he happened to have a cup of beer on the sidewalk. Well, an off-duty cop was walking by, and instead of saying, you know what, I'm an off-duty cop, we don't allow open intoxicants on the in public, so go back inside, that'd be great. Instead, he calls his cop buddies, 35 cops. In the end, put the father of the bride in the hospital in critical condition. Somebody else is in a coma and had to be airlifted by helicopter, all because a guy stepped out on the sidewalk with a cup of beer. All these things are going on. You're not allowed to have, the cities are cracking down on vegetable gardens and whatnot, and we're all constantly complaining about all of these things being crammed down our throats, and yet nobody does anything. We communicate with each other, we bitch about it, but we don't do anything. So as the computer screen becomes such a separation between us and our humanity that all that can be done is to find and post the next thing to complain about, have we been so dumbed down that we can't collaborate with each other over other, each other productively enough to eradicate the minority of tyrants that are laughing at us all the way to the bank? This is a minority of people that are doing this. It's not the majority of us. The vast majority of us, we don't want this. We don't like it. We don't need it. We object to it. And yet we are allowing this small minority of tyrants, these people in a far-off capital, to do this to us. Why aren't we conspiring together to separate them from their wealth and heal this planet? Not to mention their stupid rules. We're all just sitting on the sidelines, and it's like we're all sitting there waiting to say, I told you so. No wonder we're losing. What was the point of taking the red pill and waking up if we are just going to do nothing but complain about the situation? Do we not realize that we're getting to the point where we're not going to be able to fix this at the polling booth anymore, because these people have gotten so good at their corruption that there's almost no way that they can lose elections? This requires a revolution and sacrifice by everybody. And of course, like everyone else, I have to hold my nose and say that I'm not advocating violence of any kind that the government does to us. Don't protect yourself from the government. Turning to violence is not the answer. Think about all the sacrifices they have been forcing on you. Would it not be better to choose what you are willing to sacrifice rather than being told what you will be sacrificing, like it or not, like so much money that we strive to earn in order to be able to pay our way through our lives, through taxes, through fees, through utilities, for modern conveniences? And no, you can't just go and get a piece of property and start homesteading. They don't allow that anymore. And it's like we're all saying to each other, well, now we have an idea of what kind of crap they're feeding us, so let's all just swallow it like good boys and girls. If we do nothing now, we will deserve whatever they serve up to us later. Wouldn't it be more fun to beat them at their own game? I think collectively we could come up with enough brain power and means to do this. They will eventually force us into that corner with less resources than we have now. So the time to start doing things is now. And I don't have a solution. But myself and people like me all around the world, we are working on solutions. The thing is, we aren't stupid. So we are not going to telegraph our plans. We're not going to tell them we're getting ready to do this, that, and the other thing to combat your insipid power grabs and tyranny. No. You have to keep it quiet. You can't go out there and just start bellowing at the top of your lungs that you're going to do this, that, and the other thing, because you know what's going to happen. They're going to show up at your doorstep with a SWAT team and beat your ass down. So you got to keep it quiet. That's what you got to do. Now, over at Activist Post, there was an article this week about libertarian websites, because those of us that want smaller government, those of us that want government the hell out of our lives, those of us that want lower taxes, those of us that think all of these stupid wars that we've been getting into are nothing more than a way to enrich the military-industrial complex and to foist whatever social machinations they want on us. That includes the militarization of the police, what's going on with the police departments around the country, and everything else. It makes you a libertarian whether you believe it or not. Look up the definition of a libertarian. Explore what libertarianism means, and you will discover that, hey, you know what? Not only am I a conservative, I'm a libertarian. There is an assault on libertarian websites and social network pages. The thing is that social networking is so popular with the idiots, so we keep going where the idiots are instead of getting them to come to us. Did you hear what I just said? The problem is that we are going to the idiots instead of having the idiots coming to us. Thus, we give up control of the situation. Daily attacks on libertarian sites are not a coincidence. They come just weeks after the mainstream press made so much ado about what they called super flaggers. Let me give you some examples. There's Josie the Outlaw's Facebook page was taken down, and then Adam Kokesh's page was deleted by Fedbook. And what's behind the madness? Alex Jones' material has been censored multiple times. Mark Dice's YouTube page was taken down. Stefan Molyneux' YouTube page was taken down. Then, let me see here. Josie the Outlaw's page was taken down. Adam Kokesh's page was taken down. And apparently, it's because of these, what they call super flaggers. These are your, what do you call it? These are your swift boaters, your shills on steroids. They have super shill powers. In March, the Wall Street Journal reported that 200 people in organizations, 200 people and organizations, talk about a minority of tyrants. 200 people and organizations had been given by Google the ability to flag up to 20 YouTube videos at once to be reviewed for violating the site's guidelines. Since then, we've seen a wave of freedom-minded, libertarian websites being taken down, if not by government agencies by themselves, then by the tattletale liberals of the keyboard variety. Google, for sure, allows the UK government to censor videos that it doesn't like. Excuse me. Google was forced to offer more details about the problem. And here's how it goes. Any user can ask for a video to be reviewed by participants in the Super Flagger program can ask for as many as 20 videos to be reviewed at once. And most of these videos ultimately get taken down for good. In that respect, we libertarians have been lucky. The UK Metropolitan Police Counter-Terrorism Internet Referral Unit, for instance, sought reviews of videos it considered extremist. It justified this by invoking the Terrorism Act, or the Patriot Act, or the NDAA. Over 90% of the videos identified by super flaggers were either completely removed for violating guidelines or restricted as not appropriate for young users. This percentage is far higher than regular users who occasionally flag dubious content. The article continues that since that article was published, major libertarian names have had their social media property compromised. Presumably websites like YouTube and Facebook have this program automated so that when a super flagger flags some media or entire page, the page is taken down automatically. I have a link that goes to the Activist Post article, and all of that will be up on the website when I publish tonight's show notes. So, what do we do? Look, the governments are working hand in hand with the likes of the Google industrial complex. I might be the first person that ever used that, the Google industrial complex, and Facebook to take down, delete, disrupt the voices of libertarians, conservative people that want smaller government, say no to Big Brother, do not accept their politically correct crap when they shove it down our throats, not allowed to have our own free speech, not allowed to say what we think anymore, and on the other side, the liberation theology, the leftists, the liberals, they're allowed to say whatever the hell they want. They don't get taken down. And anyone else that disagrees with them. However, you first must reach some sort of threshold to get that to happen. So when the government decided to hand over control, now listen to this. This is my thoughts on this. When the government, I'm talking about the U.S. now, and presumably the U.K., when the government decided to hand over control of the Internet to ICANN and the UN, Will they have the same power to disrupt, or will this be a worldwide effort now to still the voices that disagree with their politically correct world government view of humanity? I suspect that the answer was not one that we will like. It never is. And now for my last topic of the evening. In case you can't tell, the issue with my vocal cords is making itself known at this point. After talking for 40 minutes, and it does that from time to time. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Tonight it appears to be, and I have plans as well, so it's going to be a short show tonight. This article is called "No Foraging in the King's Forest Because It Hurts the Peasants." Pardon me while I hit the microphone. This article is also from Activist Post, and it is an article about public land. Conveniently hidden in the noise of the Bundy Ranch standoff is the heart of the issue. This is what I've been talking about for several weeks now. Property rights and the use of government-owned land. With the federal government going on a land-grabbing spree, it's time we have a frank discussion about this so-called public land. What is it? Who owns public land? What is it public land used for? What rights do citizens have to use it? Back in feudal times, peasants weren't allowed to forage in the king's forest. Those caught poaching to feed their families were put to death. It was considered stealing private property from the king himself, not the kingdom as a whole, no matter how big his forest grew. No one claimed it hurt other peasants to take from the king, yet today we are to believe that foraging on government land somehow hurts the kingdom. So they are doing what was done in feudal times, essentially putting people that are caught, quote-unquote, poaching to feed their families to death, whether it be social, financial, or otherwise. Some citizens call Rancher Bundy a tax cheat, saying he's stealing from taxpayers because he hasn't paid his grazing fees on public land. Does this group view public property as profit centers? Do they know they're advocating the same thing as big oil companies, frackers, Harry Reid's Chinese power plant, and a host of other cronies who don't give a damn about land preservation? Do they know that they're supporting those people when they say that? Because these entities dutifully pay their fees for their right to use public land. So, if that's what you're in favor of, fine. Good for you. Now, I'm not sticking up for Cliven Bundy. That's not my job. His family claims that they've had foraging rights to government land in Utah since 1877. Ironically, that's right around the time the government stole the land from Native Americans. So, Ancestor Bundy used the government cavalry to do to them exactly what the BLM is doing to him at the behest of Harry Reid's corporate endeavors. That's just to keep it real. What goes around comes around. Does this mean that land rights only exist for people who can defend their property with weapons? It certainly seems to be that way at this point, judging by how the BLM gave up. Two armed parties faced each other, and the government realized that this wasn't going to be another Waco. This wasn't going to be another Ruby Ridge. This wasn't going to be something that they were going to walk away from unbloodied and go about their business. This was going to be a knockdown, drag-out fight, revolution style, that may spark a civil war, and they backed down. To be fair, Native Americans never understood private property until they were forced to, but they did respect tribal boundaries, which they too defended with force. Historically, property rights were recognized when somebody put their labor to the land by building a house from the trees or managing a herd on the fields. The right to use the land became ownership. and could only be claimed by an individual or a family working the land. In the example of feudal times, the king displayed ownership of the forest because he protected it with force. Significantly, the kingdom did not own the forest because no one could even begin to understand the concept. Today, property ownership comes with very few rights without permission from or paying fees to the government. For example, you could pay $7,000 a year in property taxes for a modest home and the average 3 cars that we all supposedly think that we own. You also have to buy permits to paint your house, to finish a room in the basement, to cut down trees or burn brush in the yard. And people pay the money to the kingdom because the kingdom has claimed a right to my property. The king has claimed a right to your property. So there are no more property rights. You and I don't have property rights. Increasingly, people are also being prevented from foraging, that is, keeping a garden or chickens or such on their land, as if it belonged to the king. It's apparent when property rights become privileges, the grantor of those privileges becomes the real owner of the land. But what happens when the grantor is a vague collective called the public? A king can be removed while the public cannot. Is all of this government land public? Of course not. Try hiking around the NSA data center in Utah and see what happens. Try entering Yellowstone National Park without paying the $25 entry fee and see what happens. As a taxpayer or peasant, and we really should start referring to ourselves not as citizens, not as taxpayers, but as peasants, so that we can keep in mind that we are living in feudal times once again. As a taxpayer or peasant, you have absolutely no rights to that land. Therefore, you and other citizens are not the owner of that property. The kingdom is the owner of that property. But you and I paid for it. The simple truth is, if you don't have a right to use the land, you don't own it. Claiming that not paying our fair share for using the king's land, including our own homes, is akin to treason against the kingdom, is a colossal mind victory for our rulers. People who believe this truly cannot see the chains that bind them. We now have to pay our fair share just for the privilege of quote-unquote ownership of our own property. In other words, we are living in a communist system. On a positive note, at least we have all this public land to sell real cheap to our creditors when the U.S. economy goes the way of Greece. Right? So anyways, that, ladies and gentlemen, is the program for tonight. Remember, we are, in fact, although I don't say it nearly as much as I should, the Michigan League of Fed Up Citizens, broadcasting on the Freedom Talk Radio SETV network, and this show is called Surrounded by Idiots. The near future, we need to have a way for more people to become members of the League of Fed Up Citizens Michigan Division. Maybe I'll tell you the story again behind that someday, but I'm not going to on this show because this show is over. My name is Bill Zam. Thank you so much for showing up and listening to what I have to say. I always appreciate the audience that we have. Without you, all of this would be possible. So my name is Bill Zam. Have a good weekend. And ladies, happy Mother's Day. And don't forget, folks, always wear your sunglasses and preferably also a baseball cap because it messes with the facial recognition software in the drones. Have a good week, and we'll see you next Saturday.